This is William K. Murtaugh, Martin Witness 1, and welcome to the Thursday Drive-a-thon. Well, things certainly picked up yesterday as we move into the next stages in the trials of Field McConnell. And we also had other incidents happen that kind of make for what I hope is going to be a rather interesting discussion. Now, Field McConnell is still in jail. Nobody's bailed him out yet. So he's still sitting around, a guest of the state of Florida, which apparently may not be for very long, at least if things go well. Now, as we'll discuss further on in this recording, Field McConnell had his arraignment yesterday. And basically, we found out that Field McConnell got himself a really lawyer, which is something that I had anticipated. It's not an unexpected development, it's a logical one. Because if Field McConnell had walked in there and represented himself and started to use the guidance of Kirk Pendergrass, Chris Hallett, the postmaster of the world, and all this stuff, he would be in really bad shape. But now he's got himself a really lawyer. And I will go over in detail on the Friday Murdathon as to what's going to happen and review the massive amount of paperwork that was generated yesterday and is now in the court docket. Needless to say that we're going to see a fairly normal legal case from here on out. The lawyer is going to do the best he can to mitigate Field's problems. He's going to try and get him acquitted, and short of getting him acquitted, he's going to try and do what he can to lighten the load on Field McConnell. And it's going to come at a cost. Because lawyers are not cheap, and the lawyer in question is not cheap. Very well known, very experienced Palm Beach attorney. And, criminal defense attorneys, as high profile as this person is, they can usually get some pretty decent results. It's going to be hard to say what kind of results he's going to have with what has happened with Field McConnell, but we shall see what happens. The primary situation is that the lawyer has got a petition into the court to get Field McConnell's bond reduced. And since the person that's going to be putting up the bond is his son, it makes sense that they're going to have to get it reduced because it's going to be the son's assets that are likely going to be used to procure the bond. Because unless Field McConnell has assets that we don't know about, or if he's able to get collateral put down that he already owns up in Wisconsin, the son is going to have to come up with the collateral. And the son would also have to come up with the bond. Now, as I've said before, someone is going to have to pay the retainer for this lawyer. If I read the resume of this lawyer correctly, this is not a public defender. This is a regular professional lawyer. The difference between the two is, generally public defenders are not that well paid. They don't have the resources, so on and so forth. This being a professional legal team, they're going to have a lot of resources, so they're going to be able to do a lot of investigating to see if there is anything they can use to get their client off the hook. So it's going to be interesting to see how things work out. Now, the state also has some very good lawyers. So it's going to be a clash of the titans when all this finally hits the docket. But the first step is going to be next week when Phil once again marches into court to see if he can get his bond reduced and to see if they can get a waiver so that Phil McConnell can go live with his son in Stuart, Florida, which is in another county. It's a nearby county, but it's another county. And Phil will essentially be under house arrest, and his adult son is going to have to babysit his adult father, which is something that should have been done a long time ago. The family of Phil McConnell should have got involved with this situation a long time ago. And if Phil McConnell put up any kind of resistance, they should have given him a swift kick in the ass and taken charge, and if necessary, go ahead with proceedings that would have indicated that Phil McConnell was in no condition to be determining his own affairs, and basically become a guardian ad litem over the estate. Now, after all these months, they see that this has become necessary, and the son has stepped in, finally, to take command. Now, how much he's going to be able to wield as far as influence over Phil remains to be seen. And I would suggest that the son take the necessary precautions to make sure Phil can't sneak onto a computer somewhere and talk to his minions up in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and wherever, which would put him in violation of his pretrial release. So the son has got a lot of work cut out for him. And they're going to have to really keep an eye on Phil. And there is a lot of detailed things that Phil McConnell has to put up with in order to stay out, as was noted in the instructions that I had talked about earlier. Now, some people out there that got advance word of this before I did, because I was busy and couldn't check early enough to see what was going on, they pointed out that at one time Phil McConnell had advised Cynthia Absuck not to get a lawyer. Forget lawyers. Went into a whole diatribe about it. And now, when it's his ass in the sling, he goes out and he gets a lawyer. Now, it's, in all probability, wasn't his choice. His son probably said, look, you are going to get a lawyer whether you want one or not, and we're going to fight this. He said, you should have gotten a lawyer a long time ago when you're in Wisconsin, but now that you're down here, if you want to live in my house, you're going to get a lawyer. So the son's basically taking this thing over. And, basically, Kirk Pendergrass and his version of the law has been kicked to the curb. I don't know how Kirk Pendergrass is going to react to this. He's probably going to use every excuse in the book to explain why Phil McConnell found it necessary to hire a bar-qualified lawyer. But it really puts Kirk Pendergrass in an awkward spot, because this is going to get around. That this great preacher of alternative law and of Kirk's law has basically abandoned it. That he's had to turn to the Admiralty Court, to the Crooked Court, so on and so forth, and these esquires that they're always talking about, in order to get his ass out of this mess. You know, and it's like I said, there's going to come a time when these people are going to have to give up on this stuff, and this is it. You know, the only reason that Tim Holmseth got away with what he got away with is because he was willing to abandon his family, abandon where he's lived, and run away. Go out of state. Go in hiding. His situation is not resolved. It's basically fluid. And it depends on what will ever happen if sometime Tim Holmseth finds himself in a situation where the cop does a background check on him and finds out he's got an active warrant in the state of Minnesota. If he's in the state of Minnesota, he might get arrested on the spot. If he's in another state, they'll just say, oh, well, you managed to beat this one. But that's where we're at. Now, there's something interesting here in both these situations that has to do with Tim Holmseth. Now, remember what Field McConnell is on trial for here. And what the arguments were to try and explain why Field McConnell should not be where he's at. Why he should not be arrested. Why he should not be in jail. And that has to do with the death threats that Field McConnell is alleged to have made towards Kim Picasio. That's what got him in this mess in the first place. All these threats of violence and so on and so forth. And everybody's argued that what Field McConnell did was just entertainment, that he was justified in making the comments that he made about Kim Picasio because it's free speech, blah, 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 all this sovereign citizen stuff that's been out there about why it was okay for Field McConnell to say the things he said on his live streams that got him into this mess. For something interesting has happened. Tim Holmseth wrote an article on his blog, and it's been circulated around, that has to do with death threats. And these death threats are not about Kim Picasio. They are about Kathy Miracle, a staunch supporter of Field McConnell. Now, I'm going to say right here and now, I do not condone death threats or threats of violence against anyone, especially a woman, and I do not care if it is Kim Picasio, Kathy Miracle, or anyone. Nobody but nobody deserves death threats. Nobody. Not Tim Holmseth, not Field McConnell, not Kathy Miracle, and not Kim Picasio. Now, it is alleged that this guy out of Canada, this Margaritaville dude, that's been pestering the hell out of me, Tim Holmseth, and several other people, sent an email to Kathy Miracle, and it basically said, you lie about me, you die. And it was quite direct, and I should have the slide above this part of the commentary. And to me, that is a death threat. And if it's at all possible, the guy should be prosecuted for it, or at least disciplined by YouTube, and have his channel taken down. Because it is alleged that this guy has a violent history. And he could do just exactly what Field McConnell is accused of, and that is incite someone else to incur that violence. Now, this is what I've been talking about all these months, and what everybody else has been talking about. The actions of individuals to make death threats and threats of violence to other people. This is why Field McConnell is wrong, and this is why Margaritaville is wrong. You don't do that. You don't go around threatening people's lives, making all kinds of threats of this nature to people that may have wrong ideas or bad ideas, or you disagree with them for whatever reason, but you don't threaten their lives. You don't sit there and tell people that they're going to die by going to Gitmo and they're going to be executed and all this stuff, and that if you say something bad about me, you're going to die. That's a death threat. That's inciting violence, that's making violent threats, and it's cyber stalking. And just for those who might want to know, Canada has stronger cyber stalking laws than the United States. And so Kathy Miracle probably has probable cause to call up the authorities in Canada and file charges. She can do it through law enforcement where she lives, but she can also notify Canadian authorities because they do have laws. I have personal experience at this. I didn't get threatened with violence, but I had a problem with a guy stalking me from Canada, and I got his ass put in jail because I worked with a victim in Canada and we got him locked up. So it can be done. So I suggest that Kathy Miracle not let this slide, that she start talking to law enforcement and other channels to see what can be done to curb this guy's activities. But here lies the problem. Because now you have to turn against Tim Holmseth. Because Tim Holmseth has argued that Field McConnell was perfectly justified to do what he did. In fact, it seems that Timothy Holmseth encouraged Field McConnell to do what he did. Tim Holmseth put into Field McConnell's head that Kim was some kind of child trafficker, broker for the kidnapping and selling of babies to people that use them as sacrifices and eat their blood and all this other vile stuff. You know, it was Tim Holmseth that did all this. And now Field McConnell is on trial for doing that. And guess what? If Field McConnell is acquitted of these charges, this creates what is known as a legal precedent that would go in something like the Black's Law Dictionary or all these dictionaries out there and databases they have of Florida v. McConnell. And there'll be a decision in there. If the jury finds that the guy is not guilty, then all the arguments that his defense attorney gave to the court will be there for other lawyers to use if somebody else gets charged with the same thing. And this is going to have a direct bearing on what happened to Kathy Miracle if someone, either the Margaritaville guy or someone else, starts making death threats. Now, some of you remember I got into this and I stated that if Field McConnell beats this charge and is adjudicated not guilty, that means that anyone else out there can do the exact same thing. And look what happened. Kathy Miracle has found herself in the exact same situation as Kim Bacasio. Someone has made a threat. Now, in this particular case, it's a little more direct than the one that was made against Kim Bocasio, but it's basically the same threat. That you deserve to be executed, you deserve to have your life ended. And when someone makes that kind of threat, it can be construed as aggravated cyber stalking, because you're doing it over the internet. And at the very least, that's what this guy in Canada is doing. He's engaging in aggravated cyber stalking. Now, Phil McConnell is going to go to court to try and fight aggravated cyber stalking. And if he wins, and if the guy in Canada gets wind of it, and Kathy Miracle succeeds in getting the guy arrested and put in jail, he's going to use Florida versus Phil McConnell as a defense. And it would be that much more likely that the guy would get off the hook. And look at the arguments that Tim Holmseth has made on behalf of Phil McConnell. He's argued that it's entertainment. He's argued that, it's a constitutional right for Phil McConnell to say that, and so on and so forth. And now that Kathy Miracle has been hit with this, now what? This creates a rather confusing situation. I can see excuses coming out the armpits of these people. They're going to be saying, well, gee, it's because of this, because of that. No, it's not. It's the same damn thing. Someone has made a death threat, and they need to pay for it. Now, if Phil McConnell gets acquitted, then that's grounds for acquittal of the guy in Canada. He has even marked his website as entertainment. He can use it. He says, oh, this is just entertainment. The only problem is it was an email. The guy sent an email to the victim. That makes the situation that much worse, and may make it more prosecutable. I don't know. I'm not an expert, and I'm not going to say absolute, but it's my opinion that it might just go that way. That this guy from Canada has grounds for acquittal based on what's going on in the McConnell case. And the thing is, if Phil McConnell is acquitted, people who want to make these kind of threats can look at McConnell to see what they need to do to avoid getting arrested. And they can say, well, if Phil McConnell can do this, I can do it. Look, he got acquitted. He was found not guilty. It's legal to do what Phil McConnell did. I can go and, get on there and say these people should be rounded up and sent to Gitmo and executed and so on and so forth. So it just opened a whole can of worms if Phil McConnell gets off. And the Kathy Miracle situation is an example of this. Because I guarantee you, if by some miracle, kind of a play on words here, but if by some miracle, she was able to get this guy arrested and he had to go to court, he might beat the rap. Now, it depends on what jurisdiction's going to try him, whether he's going to be extradited to the United States and be tried here, or is he going to be tried in Canada? He'd have better luck if he came to the United States, because Canada has very strict laws when it comes to this sort of thing. They don't tolerate it. If Field had been arrested in Canada, he really would have been in for a bad time up there, because they don't tolerate this crap. Their laws are a hell of a lot stronger. Canada recognized the problems with cyber stalking a long time ago, as did the United Kingdom. And so, Phil McConnell can thank his lucky stars that he's being tried in the United States. He's not so lucky to be being tried in Florida, who is pretty well advanced when it comes to cyber stalking. And considering, like I said before, what's going on in the state of Florida, he picked a bad time to go on trial. Because the Parkland shooter's on trial, the kind of stalking that Phil McConnell is talking about is going to be fresh on these people's minds, whoever gets picked for the jury, because it involved violence and involves stalking. Different set of circumstances, but similar in some ways. And this is the minefield that Phil McConnell is walking into. So it's... Phil McConnell's got a tough road ahead. He's got a pretty bad situation that he has to deal with. And it's unfortunate for him that he got involved with Timothy Homestead. For now, Phil McConnell's got to deal with this situation. And it's the same with Kathy Miracle. Because the situation with Margaritaville may get worse before it gets better. Because Margaritaville is still in the mindset that Phil McConnell was on that October day. That this is freedom of speech, he's in the right and all this. And I would anticipate that Margaritaville is not going to be too bright and he's not going to throttle back. Instead, he's going to throttle forward, and this is going to get worse and it's going to get more intense. And if not Kathy Miracle, it's going to be someone else. You know, the battle lines have been drawn. And the precipice has been set on Phil McConnell versus the state of Florida. If you want to reverse case titles here, because it's basically what it is now. Is Phil McConnell is going to defend himself against the state in a court that people like Phil McConnell, or like Kirk Pendergrass, Chris Hallett, and so forth have rallied against. They have stated, don't get a mainstream lawyer. Just like he told Cynthia Absug, don't do it. Defend yourself. Do it our way. Do it the E-Clause way. Now, Phil McConnell either chose to abandon E-Clause in this new law, or his son told him that I'm taking over the helm of this little ship of yours and I'm going to get you out of this mess. Because I guarantee you one thing. If Phil McConnell's son gets him out of this mess, there's a good chance that he's going to tell his father to knock this crap off, to get the hell off the internet, abandon the Pentagon Pedophile Task Force, abandon the Children's Crusade, go out and buy a set of golf clubs and go down to the nearest golf course. They have nice golf courses in Florida. He can sit there and play golf for the rest of his life. If he wants to get back together with Denise, maybe they can make arrangements for that. But this shit is going to come to a screeching halt. Because then there are no absolutes in the legal system. Now that Phil McConnell has got himself a mainstream lawyer, there is the possibility that he might come out of this. But he's not going to get $1.5 million a day or $1.5 million a minute or any of this. If he gets acquitted, they're going to say, case dismissed. Goodbye, Mr. McConnell. Go home. And Mr. McConnell's going to have to figure out how the hell he's going to get back to Wisconsin. If his son lets him go there. If he's got a place to go to when he gets there. Because Phil McConnell's going to walk into a financial nightmare. You know, he's got a lawyer to pay. Or son, you know, or he's gonna, you know, whatever condition his son set down to finance this little fiasco. If that's what happened. You know, Phil McConnell's going to have to go through with his obligations. Or if Phil McConnell somehow managed to do this on his own, then he's got that hanging around his neck. Because this is going to be a pretty damn expensive case. You know, the lawyer, just the attorney fees alone are going to hurt. But there's also all the filing fees, all the paperwork, all the research, everything that goes into defending a criminal case. There's a lot of money going to be tied up in this. You're talking $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 that's going to finally be sucked out of somebody's pocket by the time this all settles down. You know, and then there's the incidental expenses that went along with his incarceration, the money that's going to be lost in the bond fee, unless the son has $10,000 or $20,000 sitting in the bank that he can just draw on to pay for the bond. You know, you could always say, well, Your Honor, I'm going to put up $30,000, $40,000 to pay for my father. Here's $30,000, $40,000. You know, so there's always that. You know, so it's a situation where Phil McConnell, no matter what happens, is going to come out of this severely damaged. And especially now that he's hired an attorney. Because it's going to make everybody look stupid that followed the path of Kirk Pendergrass. Because when the rubber met the road, Phil made a U-turn and went back into the mainstream. All these arguments that have been made for years about esquires and the new law and getting rid of the bar attorneys and all of this, it's just gone out the window. Phil McConnell's had an epiphany. Phil McConnell has seen the light. Phil McConnell has had a rebirth. He's been born again. He's joined the mainstream, hired himself a competent bar licensed attorney with a little esquire after his name to get him out of a mess that he got himself into because he had to listen to people like Timothy Charles Homestead. So, the lesson to be learned here is that those of you who have been listening to the teachings of Phil McConnell all these months and years, the teaching of Kirk Pendergrass all these months and years, the teachings of this guy out in Bend, Oregon, the postmaster of the world, and all these other screwballs that have been filling your heads full of this deep state, the crooked lawyers, the crooked courts, and all this. Take a look at what Phil McConnell did. Phil McConnell surrendered. Phil McConnell went into retreat. Phil McConnell went mainstream, got himself one of these admiralty lawyers that are following admiralty laws or ship laws or whatever you want to call it. They abandoned, or he has abandoned, the teachings of all these people. He's thrown Kirk Pendergrass and E-Claus out with the garbage. He's thrown the postmaster of the world out with the garbage. He's thrown out this guy out west to the curb. He's thrown out the female judge from Alaska to the curb. He's thrown all these people away. He's even gone against his protege, Timothy Charles Homestead, thrown him to the curb. Because he's gone mainstream. He's not going to get up there and represent himself and lead his own fight. He's going to hide behind a defense attorney, like he should have done a long time ago. Because I'm quite sure if there'd been a lawyer out there that caught this early enough, they would have said, look, you need to figure out a way to apologize to this woman and get out of this mess and solemnly swear that you'll keep your trap shut and leave her alone. He might have gotten out of this. shouldn't have started it in the first place. He should have left her alone. Kim is an innocent woman. She didn't deserve the kind of treatment she's had all these years. Now, Kim isn't perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But nobody deserves the kind of crap that she has had to endure for these last 10 years. And the one responsible for all this, Timothy Charles Homestead, is escaping scot-free. Nothing has happened to Tim Homestead. Nothing is going to happen to Tim Homestead in the foreseeable future. He dodged the bullet. And Phil McConnell is the one that took the bullet. Because it doesn't matter if Phil McConnell gets acquitted or not. The fact of the matter is that Phil McConnell has spent a considerable amount of time in jail. By the time this thing goes to trial, and Phil McConnell finally gets a verdict, whether it be guilty or not guilty, it's going to be at least 6 months that Phil McConnell has been under the control of the state. Now, he might get a bond reduction and he might get remanded to the custody of his son with all the conditions that go along with it, the GPS ankle bracelet and so on and so forth, and the daily inspections and so on, and be under the thumb of his son, but he's still in control of the state. He'll be in a gilded cage. When you're under house arrest, you're still under arrest. You're not free to go sightseeing. You're confined to quarters. You want to use military gene, he's confined to quarters. And it's 50-50. It could go either way. There's no guarantees now. This is a state where Casey Anthony was acquitted of her charges. And as a funny coincidence, he's living in the general area where Casey Anthony lives. She's within an hour of him. She's a little bit farther south, but she's in that area. So maybe he can go down and take notes from Casey Anthony as to how to fight this. But this is where we're at, folks. We're at a nexus point here where a decision's going to have to be made by a jury of Mr. McConnell's peers. People are going to have to sit in a box, listen to all this crap, listen to the things that he said about Kim Picazio, and perhaps even listen to Kim Picazio herself if she decides to go on the stand as a witness. But they're going to have to endure what was said by Phil McConnell to Kim. They'll probably play all his recordings in court. Can you imagine women on the jury hearing what Phil McConnell said on those videos? The names that he called Kim Picazio? The gross sexual language that he said about Kim Picazio? And the man is right there in court. It's going to be an interesting day. I know the attorney's going to fight like hell to try and get that stuff barred from being entered. He doesn't want that stuff in court. He's got a tough fight, and he's going to have a tough case. And depending on how it goes, and what's admitted in, what's omitted, what witnesses are out there, what witnesses come forward, Kim herself. Kim's an attorney. Kim's not a nobody. She's a top attorney. And it's not boasting. The record's out there. Her record is in the docket. All the cases she's fought, the award she's won, the speaking tour she's done. She's a well-known attorney. The defense attorney for Phil McConnell probably knows her. And that's going to be in the back of his head. Whether, you just can't ignore it. It's there. So he's going to know that he's fighting against a fellow attorney. He's a good professional attorney, so he's not going to let that get in the way, but it's always going to be there. That he's taking a case against a colleague. You know, that's a tough choice for a lawyer to make, to know that you're defending someone that stalked another lawyer. But that's how strange the world is. It's like a doctor operating on another doctor, or what have you. Or a cop arresting a cop. You know, it's one of these things that happens, and you got to deal with it. But Phil McConnell is presumed innocent until proven guilty. That's the way our system works. Phil McConnell should be fortunate that he's not operating under Kirk's law. Because under Kirk's law, he would be found guilty and sent to Gitmo without a trial. There would be no due process. Because that's what Kirk wants. We've seen it by the way he's talked about doing away with all bar licensed attorneys and coming up with some other system. It would be a harsher court. There'd be less freedoms in this court. The prosecution of those that they feel are guilty of a crime would be that much swifter and direct. And so Phil McConnell can thank his lucky stars that he's not operating under Kirk's law. He can praise the Lord, pray to the Lord, thank God. This is where you find out what you place your faith in. Do you place it in Kirk's law, Matthew's law, the postmaster of the world law, or you place it in the law recognized by the Constitution of the United States, the state of Florida, and other states? Do you rely on the postmaster of the world, or do you rely on a Palm Beach attorney that is licensed by the state of Florida under the rules and regulations of the Florida Bar Association and the state of Florida? We see the choice that Phil McConnell made. We see the choice that Cynthia Absuk has finally made. And we see the choice that Sarah Dunklin has made. They've gone mainstream. Now, all three of these people are awaiting their fate. I don't know how the case of Sarah Dunklin has turned out. I don't know how things are going with Cynthia Absuk. And we're going to have to wait and see what happens to Phil McConnell. But all three of these people have one thing in common. They've abandoned Kirk's law and all this alternative legal theory, and they have gone mainstream. After all this time, after all this arguing, after all this postulating and declarations and advice that they gave to people about don't go to a lawyer, stay out of the evil court, out of the crooked court, out of the kangaroo court. Go get yourself a lawyer. It's going to be interesting if Randy Erickson and Tim Holmseth weigh in on this. What's going to be their excuse as to why Phil McConnell finally got a regular lawyer? What's going to be their reaction is because Phil McConnell got a regular lawyer, that he may beat the charge, that he may be acquitted, or at the very least get a light sentence. And Cynthia Absuk might get out of the mess that Phil McConnell got her in, and all these other people got her in, because she went to a regular lawyer. And the same goes for Sarah Dunklin. She might be able to mitigate the damage that she got hit with because of her involvement in this Underground Railroad business that she got tied up in. All these people are running away from Kirk's Law, from all this alternative stuff and the teachings of all these ultra right-wing sovereign citizen anti-CPS pundits out there that fill these people with bad advice. That at some point people decided that it's in their best interest to go mainstream. Get a regular lawyer. Get a mainstream lawyer. Get a really lawyer. And fight for their lives. Fight to stay out of jail. Fight to get their kids back. That's what's happened here. People have had an epiphany, said, screw this. I'm not going to ruin my life over some weird legal theory. You know, there's a time when you've got to abandon these fantasies and come back to the real world, and that's what's happened here. All of these people have said, screw this shit. I'm not going to lose my kid or lose my freedom over some crap that I hear on the internet. I'm going to go get myself a damn lawyer, and I'm going to do what it takes to get out of whatever mess I got myself into and get my life back on track. Now, both Saturday and Friday, we're going to discuss what's been going on and anything that might happen in the future. But I think we can all agree that what's happened to Kathy Miracle, what's happened to Phil McConnell, what's happened to Denise, or not Denise, but Sarah Dunklin and Cynthia Ebsug. I suppose Denise is in this in some way because her life's been affected by this. But all these people, we've reached a point, a nexus point, where people are finally beginning to see what happens when you screw up. Now, there's people out there, they may not like ways things are right now. All the rules and regulations we have to follow and all the procedures we have to go through to get things done, and the imperfections in society as they exist. But you do not have the power to buck the system. You have to rely on experts. And that means sometimes that you're going to have to hire a bar licensed attorney. You know, people like Kirk Pendergrass, Chris Hallett, the postmaster of the world, or some guy standing in front of a chalkboard, or a preacher Dan, those people are not the answer. If you want to reform this stuff, you do it within the system. You either run for office and get elected to office, or you go through your congressional representatives at the state or federal level and you get things changed. You get things done. But you don't go off half-cocked in these revolutionary movements like sovereign citizens or alternative laws or alternative this, that, and the other thing, because you're doomed to failure. And that's what's happened. These people have failed. They've given up. They said, I got to go back and play by the rules. I've got to go back and rely on the experts to get me out of this, not some pundit on an internet talk show. And so we move on, and we wait to see how all these pieces of the puzzle fall into place. So until the Friday night Murdathon, this is William K. Murtaugh, Murder Witness 1. Have a good one.